Well, welcome back, everybody, to Between Two Sermons. Great to have you with us, and great to have Rob back with us again as well, as we talk about the fourth and pivotal commandment of the Sabbath. So rest, deep rest. And I love one of the first lines as you talked about the Sabbath. You said, I think how our pattern of rest and work says a lot about how we view our relationship with God. Essentially.
I mentioned to you, I can't remember which book I read it in, but it was so well said. And it's in really the command, right? The command assumes that, going back even to early parts of the Bible, that work is part of God's, what it means to be made in His image and to exercise, even going back to the, cultural mandate. So work is kind of assumed. It's not good or bad. I mean, I think it's good, but work's not the focus, I think, of the fourth commandment. Has work in its relationship to a quality of rest. Is that balance right? Because I think the idea is what he's saying here, even referring to creation, because he the motivation for the fourth commandment, he says, "For I, the Lord, created, and 6 days I did this, and then I took a rest." He's saying this idea of work and rest is part of what it means to be truly human. So I like what you're saying. I think that really struck me because, of course, back to, are these things relevant, all these years later, workaholism, I don't even know if I used that word in the sermon, but is so dominant in our culture that I'm not even sure it's pejorative. So,
it's almost like a compliment.
Right.
Like people almost wear it like a badge of honor in our society.
That's right. Yeah. But I think we would agree, especially, the older you get in life, that many of our problems, let's talk about family life or balance, or many problems are caused, and many other problems are derivative of that value of workaholism, to thinking that I am what I produce. I am, the more I produce, the better person I am, the more I achieve, the better my life is. And we've seen a lot of ways in which we can say, just practically, how untrue that is. And I think to the point of the text is, or the sermon, part of the sermon is, in some ways you're working against who you are. Now, maybe not everyone agrees with that statement if you're not a Bible believer, but the Bible would say you were made to live a certain way. And if you try to live a different way, there's consequences.
Yeah, and I think what the Sabbath does is it really roots out our false sense of identity. Where are we getting our identity from? It forces you to really confront that in a very real way. Your first point is you aren't what you do.
Right.
But we often associate ourselves with what we do.
Right.
What's the first question we ask ourselves in our society, right?
Right. What do you do for a living?
What do you do?
Yeah, right. You're at a golfing outing or whatever. What do you do for a living?
Yeah, you put you in a box. This is your box that you fit in.
Right.
And certainly, I think that's true for everybody. For us in ministry, though, it's like even harder sometimes.
Yeah.
It carries a unique challenge to it.
Right.
Because you're doing work for God.
Right.
And sometimes you can forget to be with God.
That's right. No, well said. It's very true.
So it's not just a message for all of you out there. This is Rob and I doing our work here as well.
I think it's very true. A lot of, as you said, a lot of people in ministry or in service work, maybe, feel that, you because you're working for God, more is more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what are some of those practical ways, like as we're sitting here helping people think through this concept a little bit more, what are some of those practical ways that you think, okay, if I set aside this day to be with God and to rest and to enjoy Jesus as my rest, I love that you brought that Matthew passage into this, where Jesus says, hey, my yoke is easy, my burden is light.
Right. You can find rest for your soul.
Rest for your souls.
Right.
If we're going to live that out, how what are some practical ways to do that? And maybe you can just speak from your own experience. Or
I think, I love the quote you just brought, which was, I'm sure Jesus is doing this on purpose because he doesn't say rest. He could have stopped there. He says rest for your soul. So one is you got to recognize, we all need to recognize that deeper than our, we typically think of ourselves as having a certain amount of physical energy. Mm-hmm. I'm tired. I'm energized. I had a good night's sleep, and all that's important. But we're really talking about something deeper, or that's maybe it's both and, but it's really about a soul rest. So for number one, we have to recognize that. And what might be one of the things you might say, or listening to your question, maybe it's both a combination of what do I put down and what do I take up? So to be able to, for me personally, so as you asked me to apply it, for me to be able to find soul rest, or to find a deeper peace, to find a deeper clarity, a sense of connection with God, even connection with myself. It starts by what am I not paying attention to? If I'm, if I'm not only something like my phone, which is a big deal, or social media, or whatever, but if I'm thinking about, which is easy for me to do, work all the time, or I'm even though I'm sitting with you at a conversation at dinner at the table, I'm thinking about something. I'm worrying about, let's say, work, so I have to consciously find places or times. Doesn't have to be a place, can be, where I'm saying I'm not going to think about these matters right now. I'm putting it down. That's number one. And I think that's a real challenge for us.
Yeah. And how do you do that? Like practically, how does that work for you? For you to do that?
I would say the first two things that come to mind is, one, I do try to take time every day and just both listen or read the Word of God. And when I do that, I'm doing my best to try to really pay attention. I'm to not be thinking about other things. And in prayer to, I'm talking about my life sometimes with God. I'm talking about things that are going on in the world or in whatever. But I'm trying to do it as if God and I were having a conversation, or God is listening to me. I'm in the presence of God. So I by definition, I have to put other things down. I have to forget about other things. So that's one way. I would say for me, I think that's true for a lot of people, whether it's take any kind of a physical activity. For me, taking a walk, even I like to ski in the winter. What I'm skiing, just as an example, could be snowshoeing, could be taking a walk. I'm like free. It's one of the. So we all have those things. That that we do that really maybe actually are increasing our physical activity, but it's rest.
Yes.
Because I'm putting other things down. So I would say one of the ways that I find that rest, because what I'm doing there really, it could be in many things, many examples of either just sit around relaxing or doing something, is I'm enjoying the gifts of God. I'm sort of believing that God is pleased in me enjoying the things that He's given me to do. Could be, whatever. So I think I need to find ways that are, we sometimes use the word unplugged, but where I'm just enjoying certain gifts and sets in blocks of time, and things that I find enjoyable or meaningful. Could even be serving someone else if that's what I find enjoyable or meaningful. But I'm not doing it as a quid pro quo. I'm not trying to earn something. I'm doing it I'm doing it as a source of joy. So I would say that's one. But certainly worship. It says in the command, remember the Sabbath, and I think it says keep it holy, and that's a short sentence, but I think it's trying to say, and then it goes on about stop working. I think it's a combination of putting down whatever you and I is our main occupation in life. Maybe we're students. You don't have to be an adult to have an occupation, but whatever it is that really takes our time, to put it down, right, intentionally, but then to take up. Holy really just means set apart. Am I setting something apart to perhaps, in this case, listen to God, maybe contemplate about God, maybe contemplate even my own life. So those are some quick things that I think of.
Yeah, I
What
love
about you?
those. Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's a paradigm that's been helpful for me in this as I try to apply this to my life on a weekly basis, probably for like 15 or 17 years now.
Yeah, because I know, tell us about it.
It's just 4 principles. Stop my work, stop what I'm doing. So like I don't check my email, and that's really hard for me. I always itch to get to my email and do my stuff, so I have to actually put the email on my phone off of so I can't see it.
Right.
That for me is just a practical way to do that. Stop, rest. So actually Sabbath is a day where I sleep in, or I'll take a nap, or I'll just get my body physical rest. Like you're saying, worship.
Yeah.
Spend some extended time with God that day, and it could look a million different ways.
Right.
More time in the Bible, more time in prayer, listening to worship music, whatever it is, but worship, and then delight. Like you're talking about skiing, bringing you life. Being in nature for me is one of those things. Like believing.
Hunting, I know you love to hunt.
I love doing that.
Yeah.
Being up in a tree with a bow. And that for me is life-giving.
Yeah.
And so for us to really believe that isn't something that God doesn't want from us, but that is actually a gift that he's willing to give us, is this day where we're able to enjoy the gifts that he's given us in life.
I don't know if this is true for you, but I have found some of my greatest thinking, in some cases for sermons, let's say, if that's what but it could be anything, conversations or thinking about my own life, happen in avocational times.
Totally.
Where I'm not saying I'm going to go study X or study Y, or I'm going to take time to figure something out, where I'm just sort of out there enjoying whether it's nature or some kind of sport or whatever, and I'm just sort of freed up, and it's amazing how many times I have some of my best thoughts there, and I wonder if that's not part of what is being talked about here. That we are back to this. We are not what we do. Even back to the story of Egypt, where this all starts. It's sort of extreme.
Yes.
I mean, people. I remember when I was just rereading for this sermon, the Moses and Pharaoh's conversation. So I hadn't read it in a while. We were not studying the book of Exodus, but it's almost seems like he's being over the top, and it's almost like he's talking about the 21st century. He goes, what do you mean these people?
Right.
They're lazy. This is what he says.
Yeah.
They're lazy people. This is the English translation. Tell them to get back to work. And you think, wow, that sounds like I heard that yesterday from, so,
more bricks, less straw.
Yeah. It's very, that seems very common understanding, even if we would say it in a softer way. If we think about where we work and what we do, that we sometimes think that's the language of life, but in God's eyes, it's not the language of true life. The language of true life is not you are what you do and you're lazy and more is more. It really isn't. And I think in our modern culture, which is, we may not worship the bull god, but we very much worship the God of production. We very much worship the God of achievement. It's so wired into our lives, I think, and most people would agree, in our culture, that as Christians, as Walter Brueggemann would say, Sabbath is resistance.
I was just thinking of that quote as you were talking. Yeah, I was just thinking of that. Yeah. Sabbath is resistance.
Yes.
Yeah.
To
the principalities and powers of this age, Sabbath is saying no.
In fact, I think the whole quote is, the subtitle of the book, Sabbath is resistance, Sabbath is alternative. And that's so helpful. And it's not, especially in the waters we swim in modern life, it's not where the current is going. It's not the air that we breathe. As followers of Jesus, I think in the end, we're better people for it. We might even be more successful people for it, in the sense of joy.
Right.
But we have to make a decision, right, to unplug, a decision to have contemplation, a decision to worship, a decision to not, remember that I am not what I do. Back to this idea of remembering that I am made in God's image. I wake up even on my worst day, and I don't typically feel this way, but the truth is I wake up already fully valued by God. My worth is inherent. Wow. Most people don't feel that. I don't know that I typically feel that. I have to remind myself of my inherent worth because of God's creation and redemption. And that's really central, I think, to truly experiencing Sabbath. And we have to find time, everyday life, of course, but I like your point too, that both in Exodus 20 and in modern day life, it's probably very helpful for people to really take a half a day, whatever it is.
Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast yesterday. It wasn't a Christian podcast. They were just talking about successful companies, and one of the things they were talking about was Chick-fil-A and how they are. It doesn't make any sense, and this was from a total non-Christian point of view.
Business standpoint.
From a business standpoint, they're closed on Sundays, but yet they are the most successful fast food franchise. And I almost wonder if there's something that God has built in, like a principle that he's built into the system where he goes, if you live this way, it's gonna surprise you, but actually I'm going to reward, I just build it into the system like gravity.
What's interesting, some quote I read, I don't remember who it was, but said the fourth commandment, the Sabbath commandment, is the closest thing the Bible has to a reflection of natural law. Basically saying what you're saying.
Yeah.
That, there's something about the calculus of the fourth commandment, or the balance between work and rest, this writer was saying, that's basically saying this is the nature of life. And if you want to experience life, these weren't his exact words, but if you want to experience life for all that it was meant to be, this is how you need to choose to live your life.
Right.
And maybe even in a business decision, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
It seems like that's a dumb idea. If all your competitors have 7 and you have 6, you're not likely to be on top.
Right.
But somehow that's not true in that case.
Yeah, isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the gospel, right?
Yeah.
And that's what brings us back to Jesus being our Sabbath.
That's right.
That's the gospel. It's counterintuitive.
Right.
The way up is down.
That's right.
The way through it is to just submit. And it isn't this trying and striving our whole life to reach something. It's this way of surrender of our lives.
Yeah.
And Sabbath reminds us to surrender too.
No, that's well said.
So I think that's a great challenge for all of us. So I appreciate you bringing the word in that way and leading us toward that. I think if we apply that to our lives, man, it could be really energizing, maybe a fresh take on what it looks like to live the Christian life a little bit.
Yeah.
And I would say it would be appropriate to ask yourselves this question in the group. Why do I struggle with doing this? And I think we all probably struggle with...
I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, safe to say. We all struggle with taking some time and just saying, hey, I'm giving this over to God. And what is there in my heart that makes it hard for me to do that?
Yeah.
And that's a great way to start a discussion together about this.
I like one of the questions, maybe it was Tricia that mentioned it, and we were just talking earlier, what's more important to you, or what is more reflective of your experience, a deep peace or chaos, or however she said it.
That was a good question.
Yeah. So you can ask yourself, how well are you doing, by simply taking your soul temperature, if you want to call it that. And if you'd say, well, deep peace, however you want to describe that, a quiet, a calm, a confidence, a not overly moved by things that up or down. If you want to call that a deep peace, is that describing you? Right. If it is, then you're probably doing okay in this area. I mean, as a follower of Jesus in particular, but maybe that's a good indication. But if you'd say, no, I'm feeling mostly chaotic. I feel chaos. I have a hard time slowing my mind, my heart down. I don't sleep well, whatever it is. Maybe that's an indication that I need to really take a hard look at this. This isn't it's very important we learn about all the commandments, but this one, where this isn't a how do you get points with God.
Right.
This is the opposite.
Yeah.
It's how can you live a higher quality of life as receiving a gift. The Sabbath is a gift.
It's a gift.
And that is so important for us to understand. And, I think we're almost wired to assume the Ten Commandments, maybe the Bible in general, but the Ten Commandments are the opposite. That this is a burden God is laying on us. And it's so the opposite of that. And it's so important to know that it's really a gift.
Yeah.
The Sabbath or Sabbathing, the principle of the Sabbath, however one experiences it, is meant to be a gift to encourage, inspire life and have a greater, richer life, as Jesus said, life, the abundant life. That's really the point.
Yeah, I love that. Words to truly live by, as the series is talking about. So thanks again, Rob. Appreciate it. And thank you for all joining us. And we'll see you back here next week on Between Two Sermons.